Hey, Vinyl Community, Jeff here. Time to enter a contest. Yes, it is. This one is for Josh Keech. He has a channel. He plays guitar. If you don't know him, check him out. There'll be a link below. Been following him for years. We communicate back and forth occasionally. Great stuff. He's celebrating, and he's celebrating hitting 400 subscribers, and he wants to see a couple fours. So what we're looking at is 4 of our favorite bands. Such a subjective, so many different ways you could approach that. And 4 what he would call gateway, entry type bands if you're trying to introduce somebody to metal. Now, the toughest thing about a contest like this is overthinking it, is getting into your mind. I mean, and I struggled with this. I wanted to enter this contest a couple days ago, and I just kept hemming and hawing around about what to choose. And then I thought to myself finally today, this is not a life or death situation. There's no wrong answer here. Yeah, favorite band, 4 bands. It could be, he said, your all-time favorite band. It could be your current favorite band, things like that. So there's so many ways to go. Now, I'm not even, like I've seen other people mention, you could easily go with all the ones you grew up with. You've got the Maidens and the Kisses and the, all the classic metal bands we grew up with, Black Sabbath, stuff like that. I tried to go with a little slightly different approach, even though some of that is still brought in. And then, yeah, in the gateway situation, it can be taken all different directions too. So let's get into this. I don't want to waste too much time. What I decided to do is look at classic bands that have been around for decades that are still putting out top-notch material in their latter years. So we are going to touch on some of those classics. I mean, there's so many bands that I would call my favorites, and there's so many. I thought about initially pulling some albums that were bands that were relatively new that have become favorite, but I went this route instead. JudasPriest, been around since the 70s. This is one of their strongest albums, their latest album, so they are going strong. And this is just one of those albums that gets repeatedly played. It's a great, strong album. So JudasPriest is one of my favorite classic bands. So is, all the other bands that go out there. But because of their great material that they've been putting out most recently, then I went ahead and included them as one of the favorites. So let's go there. Queensryche, same thing. Been a fan since the first EP in the 80s. They've put out hit or miss stuff over the years. I really kind of like it all for various reasons. But for the most part, the band, even with member changes, has come back and they've been doing great stuff the past couple years. So I threw them in there. They've always been a favorite band with Jeff Tate, and the new stuff is, strong. Even without, it's still great stuff. Stryper, been a fan since they came out in the 80s. Their material that they put out in the past 10 or 15 years have been some of their strongest material. So yeah, another classic band that I grew up with, which I love their early stuff, but they have adapted to putting out great stuff latter in years. And this one's kind of a stretch, and I'm showing this particular album because I literally just got it in and I haven't shown it on any other video, but and that's Riot 5. Now this is a stretch because Riot 5 is a new formation of the band Riot. Now the band Riot, one of my all-time favorite bands. People say, they're more hard rock. They really were back in the 70s and early 80s. Phenomenal years. They did do some transitioning into more of a power metal age around Thundersteel. Then they kind of went back into more of a hard rock and metal through the latter years. And then when Mark passed away, the last the founding member, the guys from the Thundersteel era got back together and started making power metal Riot stuff, and that's what Riot 5 is. It's a continuation of that Riot leg from the original days, and it's just phenomenal. So I recently found I have all the studio albums, but this is one of the 2 live albums that came out. The other one is really hard to find, that I actually found a copy on eBay for really inexpensive, and it's like brand new condition. So triple record, and like I said, I haven't shown it, so I'll show a little bit more of it now. Triple vinyl on purple, great stuff, live in Japan 2018. So there you go. 4 bands that are classic bands from decades past who are still putting out prime level material. All right, now moving into gateway metal bands. This is so many different ways to approach this. And I just go with what I did. Anyway, if you're looking to introduce somebody just to straightforward, powerful metal, not power metal, powerful metal, Dio HolyDiver, great entry level. It's got enough melodicness to not offend somebody who's not into the aggressive stuff, but it's got enough grit to where it's going to give you a bite of, you know, just straight up metal. And there's so many bands that would fall in this category, but this is the remixed version of HolyDiver, which sounds so clean and powerful in different ways. So yeah, I would say here, check out something if you're into something that's a little more decipherable lyrically, melodic, but still, you know, just metal. And now this band has come up a lot. Usually they pick a different album. I went with Master of Puppets for Metallica. And why? The Black Album is a very introductory level. It's got enough heaviness and strength and enough slower melody type stuff to maybe be a good entry level thing. I went with this because if you're trying to bring somebody in that maybe wants to be brought into a little more aggression, a little more of the thrash aspect, this is the one that everybody's going to go to. Personally, I probably would love the first album the most, but you know, as far as introducing other people, this has it all. If you want something a little heavier for them to be introduced to, it's still melodic. He still doesn't have the vocals that Metallica's vocals are not so aggressive that maybe they'd be turned off by a Cookie Monster type. It's very palatable. It's very production. Everything is really great. Now, interesting note, I'll say as a side note, we hear a lot of Metallica on the radio, especially when you're listening to Sirius XM. And my wife, not growing up as a huge Metallica fan, but been around me long enough to know, she hears the stuff on the radio more frequently. And it was probably in the past year or so, she brought up an observation that honestly I had not given much thought about. She said, how come Metallica is not considered a prog band? Because honestly, if you think about it, if you go back, especially the first few albums, they do a lot of time changes, a lot of just weaving in and out of different progressions through their songs. And I thought, you know, that's an interesting idea. I mean, they're not like crazy progressive, but they have so many time changes. They're not just straightforward driving fast. They got so many time changes, especially on the early albums. And I'm like, you know, it's a good question. Would this be considered progressive thrash? I don't know if anybody's ever used that term. I don't know if anybody's ever brought that out. I never thought about it. But honestly, if you go back and listen to the first 4 or 5 albums, up to the Black Album, after that, I think maybe they went a little more straightforward. But all of the early thrash stuff seems to have that feel to it. All right, now, introducing people to a melodic... You know, when you go back into like the hair metal days, the glam, the what I call melodic metal, I decided to pull something from the new wave of the modern metal, WingsOfSteel, a modern band that captures that 80s vibe, if you want to call it that, the melodic metal of those days. There are a lot of bands that are in this traditional metal, new wave of traditional metal field. This just happens to be one that resonates with me recently. Just great, lots and lots of great bands that are recapturing that melodic metal of the 80s that came out. So I would introduce them something like this because it is modern and yet still classic in a sense. And then if you want to introduce them to something, if they're a musician and you want to introduce them to something that's going to captivate them, you know, musically, their musical sensibilities, how about something like DreamTheater? This is the newest one from DreamTheater. I haven't shown it yet. I just got it. Everybody's got it. Not a whole lot to say about it. Mike Portnoy Returns, one of my favorites. It's a great album. I love it. I've played it a few times. But the point is that if you want to introduce them to something that, and people may say, they're not metal. They're metal enough. Come on. They got enough grit to where they're going to be heavy. And that makes them a good introduction too, because maybe the people you're introducing them to, you want to bring them in a little more subtly with the edge, but still have a lot of the mellower side of things. And they're not mellow, but they're just, maybe people don't want to call them metal. It's so subjective. People are going to argue about what's metal and what's not metal. That's not metal. Well, this is metal to me, and it's progressive. So progressive hard rock and metal, great introductory stuff. If you've got a musician who's into the technical side of things, or even somebody who just loves the melodic yet, instrumentally challenging side of things, then a band like DreamTheater would be a good introduction. There you go. my ideas at this time of this video being made of 4 introductory bands that you could introduce people to metal through, and 4 bands that I think are going strong that are still favorites to this day. And that's it for this one. Check out Josh's channel, jump on board, enter, have fun, click like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you later. Rock on and rock hard.